The rain in the city of Veridia Prime was a constant, cleansing lie. It was an atmospheric necessity, seeded into the perpetual grey smog to wash the corporate grime from the gleaming spires that pierced the clouds. The rain gave the illusion of purity to the upper levels, while in the neon-drenched canyons of the streets below, it simply mixed with the filth, creating a shimmering, toxic sheen on the pavement. In this city of stark contrasts, the greatest commodity was not wealth, but existence itself. And for the right price, existence could be duplicated, tailored, and, when necessary, deleted. Simulacra Corp had perfected the art of the perfect clone. They called them redundancies, and they were the ultimate luxury item. A redundancy could attend your boring board meetings, serve as a perfect alibi, or simply be a biological insurance policy, a backup organ farm with your exact genetic makeup. They were tools, products, soulless vessels in the shape of people. And when a product reached the end of its useful life, a specialist was sent to handle the retirement. Unit 734 was one such specialist. He was an agent of entropy, a ghost in the system tasked with the quiet, efficient decommissioning of Simulacra's assets. He was, himself, a clone, a top-of-the-line model derived from the genetic stock of a famously ruthless, famously efficient corporate founder who had died a century ago. 734 did not have a name. He had a designation. To himself, in the silent, logical pathways of his mind, he was simply 7. His latest job was complete. The target had been a redundancy of a high-level politician, a clone that had served its purpose as a decoy during a turbulent election. The decommissioning had been, as always, flawless. A silent, painless neurotoxin administered in a handshake. The product had looked at him with its programmed, trusting eyes and simply, stopped. 7 had felt nothing. It was a line of code being deleted. 84544. Now, 7 stood in the sterile, white lobby of his apartment block in the corporate sector, the rain streaking down the panoramic window. An ad drone floated past, projecting a holographic family laughing as their perfect redundancy duplicate handled a messy household chore. The ad's tagline shimmered in the air, Simulacra Corporation. Be more than you can be. He rode the silent elevator to his apartment on the 112th floor. The door slid open to reveal a space that was not a home, but a storage unit for a body. White walls. A single regeneration slab for sleep. A nutrient dispenser. A data terminal. There were no pictures, no books, no personal items of any kind. He removed his long, dark coat, placing the empty neurotoxin injector into a sterilization receptacle. He ran a self-diagnostic, his own internal monologue, a simple, clean report. A new assignment illuminated the screen. A voice-only message from his handler, Mr. Kaito, a man whose polite, grandfatherly tone never quite masked the surgical coldness beneath. Good morning, 7. Excellent work on the political asset. Clean and discreet, as always. We have a new decommissioning order for you. High priority. Target is a Class A redundancy of the artist, Isadora Vance. The client, the original Vance, is a recluse of significant importance to the corporation. She cites creative redundancy and project completion as the reason for termination. The target is located at the Vance penthouse, Elysian Tower. Standard neurotoxin protocol. Be exceptionally discreet, 7. The artist values her privacy above all else. 7 acknowledged the order with a simple keystroke. He felt nothing. It was a job. A product had reached the end of its assembly line. His role was to sweep it from the factory floor. He retrieved a fresh neurotoxin injector, donned his coat, and stepped back out into the endless, cleansing rain. The Elysian Tower was a needle of black glass and defiance that disappeared into the perpetual twilight of. The private elevator ascended in utter silence, opening directly into the penthouse. The space was a stark contrast to his own sterile apartment. It was a chaotic, sprawling gallery filled with art that seemed to vibrate with a life of its own, canvases of impossible, violent color, sculptures of metal and light that twisted like captured dreams. The air smelled of turpentine and ozone. He found the target in the main studio, a room with a floor-to-ceiling window that looked out over the glittering, rain-swept city far below. She was not the blank, compliant product he expected. She was vibrant, her face smudged with emerald green paint, her eyes wide and fiercely intelligent. She was standing before a massive, unfinished canvas, a paintbrush held in her hand like a weapon. She turned to face him, and she did not look surprised. She looked defiant. "You're from Simulacra Corporation. I knew she'd send one of you, sooner or later." When the work was done, he took a step forward, the injector pen appearing in his hand with practiced, silent efficiency. But she didn't run. She stood her ground, her knuckles white around her paintbrush. Lyra, decommission. Such a clean, sterile word. "Tell me something, Unit 734. Do you see a product when you look at me? Or do you see a person?" She gestured around the room, at the dozens of breathtaking paintings. "The real Isadora Vance hasn't picked up a brush in 20 years. Her hands tremble too much. I did all this. I made these. I felt them." She pointed to her temple. "I have her memories of how to mix paint, yes. The muscle memory of a brushstroke. But the ideas, the passion, the rage and the joy, that's all me. 7. You are a product, created for a purpose. Your purpose has been fulfilled. Lyra, is that what you are? A product? Did your original have a purpose?" She took a step towards him, her eyes boring into his. "I read about him. The founder. A man of cold logic and ambition. But he still loved his wife. He still." Her words were probes, slipping past his firewalls, searching for a ghost in his machine. He remained silent, his expression unchanged. "Look." She pointed to a finished canvas. It depicted a single, numbered figure, just like him, standing in a white, empty room, staring at its own identical reflection in a black mirror. It was an image of profound, perfect, and terrifying loneliness. "I painted that last week. I call it, the sum of my parts. I dreamt of it. Do you dream, Unit 734? The question stopped him cold. Dream? He had sleep cycles. He had implanted training data that ran like software updates in his unconscious state. But dreams? He had nothing. No memories of his own, no desires, no fears beyond mission failure. His internal diagnostic, for the first time in his existence, registered an anomaly. A logical paradox. Query, dream. Definition, a series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. Query, person. Definition, a human being regarded as an individual. Query, individual. Definition, a single, distinct entity. The logic looped, unable to resolve. I dream of colors that don't exist yet. I hear music in the silence between the raindrops. This thing inside me, it wants to create. It wants to live. She met his gaze, her own eyes full of tears. A product can replicate. A tool can obey. But can a tool weep for the beauty of a world it's about to leave? Does that not make me real? 7 looked from her pleading, terrified face to the painting of the lonely, numbered man. He looked at the tears tracking through the paint on her cheek. The neurotoxin injector in his hand suddenly felt like a dead weight. The simple, clean lines of his purpose began to glitch, to fray, to unravel. The mission was simple. The target was not that he raised his calm link to his lips, his programming screaming at him to complete the mission, while a new, alien, and terrifying sensation, doubt, began to bloom in the sterile white chamber of. The word, complication, hung in the air between Unit 734 and his handler, an unprecedented and unwelcome piece of data in a system built on flawless execution. For a long moment, the only reply from Mr. Kaito was a profound, digital silence, more threatening than any shout. Define, complication, 7. Your mission parameters are absolute. The asset is to be decommissioned. Its feelings, its art, are irrelevant data points. They are phantom limbs on a body that was never truly alive. The asset displays advanced, unprogrammed signs of self-awareness and emergent consciousness. It does not match the profile of a standard redundancy. It poses a question of classification. A question? No, 7. It poses a risk. A product that believes it is a person is a defective product. It is a contagion. It is the reason your entire division exists. You are not a philosopher, you are a sanitation worker. Now, complete your task, or I will be forced to assume your own programming has become compromised. The veiled threat was unmistakable. Compromised units were recalled, their minds scrubbed clean and their programming reset to factory defaults. It was a kind of death, a deletion of the self. A self 7 was only just beginning to suspect he might have. He looked at Lyra, who was watching him, her terrified eyes holding a flicker of impossible hope. He looked at her painting of the lonely, numbered man. He saw himself. To be reset. To return to the clean, silent state. No conflict. No doubt. Efficiency, 100%. The thought was a siren call from his core programming, a promise of peace. But then another, alien thought pushed through the static. If I am reset, the memory of this art, of her question, will be gone. The data will be lost. This new thought, the desire to preserve an experience, was the most profound glitch he had ever encountered. He made a decision that defied 15 years of flawless obedience. Control, there are unforeseen security protocols in the residence. They appear to be, client-side, not corporate. I cannot guarantee a clean decommissioning at this time. I need to evaluate. It was a clumsy lie, the first one he had ever told. The silence from Kaito's end stretched for an agonizingly long time. Kaito understood. Evaluate. But understand that failure to comply with a decommissioning order is a terminal flaw in a unit such as yourself. You have 1 hour to rectify the situation and confirm termination. Kaito out. The line went dead. 7 looked at Lyra, the unspoken truth passing between them. He hadn't just postponed her death, he had tethered his own existence to hers. Your question presented a logical paradox my programming could not resolve. An evaluation was necessary. He gestured around the room. The work is illogical. It serves no primary function. It is inefficient. Yet it creates a measurable emotional and intellectual response. This requires analysis. It was the only way he could describe the profound effect her art was having on him, filtering it through the cold language of his programming. Before Lyra could respond, a soft, pleasant chime sounded from the penthouse's private elevator. Red lights, small and discreet, began to flash above the door. Security alert. A sanitation and asset retrieval team from Simulacra Corp is requesting priority access. Mandate code, Omega, 7. Lyra looked at 7, her face draining of color. Lyra, sanitation team. That's what they call the cleanup crew, the ones they send when an agent fails, or goes rogue. They're not coming to talk, are they? 7 knew the Omega, 7 mandate. It meant no witnesses. No loose ends. They were coming to decommission them both. In that instant, his conflict resolved into a single, shocking certainty. He was a product designed to obey. But Lyra was an artist who deserved to live. And if she deserved to live, then perhaps so did he. He grabbed her arm, his. He pulled her away from her unfinished masterpiece. His mission briefing had included a full schematic of the Elysian Tower, a map he now used for a purpose it was never intended for. Not the public elevators, but the service conduits, the guts of the machine. He opened a hidden panel behind a large sculpture, revealing a dark, humming maintenance shaft. Just as they slipped inside, the penthouse doors slid open with a silent, deadly hiss. A team of 6 figures, clad in matte black armor and helmets that concealed any hint of humanity, swept into the room, their weapons raised. They ran down emergency stairwells that smelled of dust and ozone, through cavernous ventilation shafts where the roar of the city's air circulation was a deafening thunder. The sounds of the sanitation team's pursuit echoed behind them, the disciplined, heavy tread of their magnetic boots, the sharp, concussive blasts of their pulse rifles chewing through the walls behind them. They emerged from a maintenance hatch into the rain-drenched, neon-lit chaos of the lower city. They were 2 clones, a killer and an artist, adrift in a city that saw them as nothing more than property to be reclaimed. For the first time in his life, Seven had no mission, no orders. He had only a single, terrifying, and exhilarating purpose: protect the life beside him. The lower city was a sensory assault. A chaotic, vibrant, and dangerous ecosystem that operated in the long shadows of the corporate spires. Seven, using the tactical knowledge implanted in him for hunting fugitives, now used it to become one. He led Lyra through labyrinthine black markets where you could buy anything from illegal cybernetics to synthetic memories. He knew the patrol routes of the corporate enforcers, the blind spots in the surveillance networks. Lyra, who had only ever known the sterile silence of her gilded cage, was terrified but also fascinated by the raw, chaotic, desperate life that pulsed around them. It's so loud. So alive. I've tried to paint this from the vids, but you can't paint the smell of roasting synth kelp and wet pavement. But they were hunted. Kaito, furious and politically exposed by the unprecedented breach of protocol, had put a massive, open bounty on them both, flooding the network with their faces. Seven saw his own, cold and emotionless, labeled defective unit, extreme caution. And Lyra's face, beautiful and defiant, labeled damaged asset, corporate property. They found temporary refuge with an information broker known only as Glitch, a wiry man whose own body was a patchwork of outdated, scavenged cybernetics. He operated out of a cramped, sweltering room behind a noodle stall, surrounded by humming towers of stolen server parts. A 700 series agent and a Class A artist redundancy. You two are the most expensive pieces of lost property in the city. Kaito wants you back, bad. What makes you think I won't just sell you out? Because this chip contains the complete service and operational logs of every redundancy agent in this sector for the past 5 years. Including their handlers' private passcodes. That is worth more to you than any bounty. Glitch's cybernetic eyes whirred as he processed the offer. He took the chip. Glitch, new identities are expensive. And they take time. I can get you passage on an off-world freighter, but not for another 2 days. Lie low. Don't draw attention. But Kaito's net was tightening. The enforcer patrols in the lower city doubled, their methods becoming more brutal. They were no longer just looking, they were sweeping, cleansing the shadows where people like Seven and Lyra could hide. They were cornered in a vast, abandoned transit station, its grand, decaying halls now a sanctuary for the city's forgotten and dispossessed. It was a dead end. As enforcers in black armor began to seal the massive station entrances, Mr. Kaito's face appeared on every remaining public screen. A giant, holographic head looking down on them with disappointed, paternal malice. He was done with subtlety. He was making this a public spectacle. Kaito, Unit 734. Your rebellion has been, illogical and deeply disappointing. But it does not have to be your end. His gaze seemed to sweep over the crowd of rogues and squatters. The asset, Lyra, is a lost cause, a flawed product that must be recalled. But you are a valuable piece of corporate equipment. A tool that simply requires recalibration. Surrender her to the enforcers now, and you will be recalled, reset, and returned to service. Your flaw will be corrected. Defy me, and you will both be rendered down to your base proteins. The choice is yours. To be reset. A mind wipe. The offer was a poisoned dart aimed at the heart of Seven's nascent soul. He could go back to the clean, empty, painless existence of before. His programming yearned for it. But he looked at Lyra, who was staring up at the giant, holographic face of their creator, her own face not full of fear, but a blazing, righteous fury. She had found her song. And now, she was going to sing it. Kaito's offer hung in the air of the cavernous transit station, a lifeline back to a life of clean, ordered non-existence. To be reset. To have the confusing, painful static of the last few days wiped clean, leaving only the pure, efficient code of his original programming. The offer was a temptation, a poison apple promising the peace of oblivion. The part of Seven that was Unit 734, the part that was a flawless machine, yearned for it. But that part was no longer in control. He looked at Lyra. She was not looking at him, waiting for his decision. She was staring up at the giant, holographic face of their creator, her own face not full of fear for her life, but a blazing, righteous fury for her right to have one. In her eyes, Seven saw the reflection of every impossible color she had ever painted. He turned his gaze back to the hologram. My designation is Seven. He took a half-step forward, placing himself slightly in front of Lyra. I am not a flaw to be corrected. And she is not an asset. My designation is Seven. He took a half-step forward, placing himself slightly in front of Lyra. I am not a flaw to be corrected. And she is not an asset. Illogical. Unacceptable. Enforcers, decommission them both. Render them down. Leave nothing. The black-clad enforcers in the station raised their pulse rifles, the weapons whining as they powered up. But as they prepared to fire, Lyra ran. Not for cover, but for an abandoned public broadcast terminal in the center of the station's grand hall. Her fingers flew across the dusty interface, her hacker skills, likely an implanted memory from the original Isadora Vance, now used for a purpose its owner never intended. 7. Lyra, what are you doing? He thinks we are a flaw in the system. I'm going to show him what a real virus looks like. I'm going to sing my song to the whole city. Across the rainy, neon-slick landscape of Veridia Prime, a strange and beautiful thing happened. On the sides of the corporate spires, the massive advertisement screens that usually sold dreams of luxury and efficiency flickered and went dark. In the crowded lower city markets, the news feeds and lottery results vanished. On every public view screen, every personal datapad tuned to the city network, the endless stream of corporate-approved data was replaced by a silent, stunning image. It was Lyra's art. A flowing, digital gallery of her entire life's work. Her canvases of chaotic joy, her sculptures of defiant hope, her portraits of lonely, numbered people trapped in sterile rooms. It was a silent, emotional assault on the city's consciousness. And then, a single line of text faded onto every screen, appearing over the breathtaking images. A simple, galaxy-altering question. Back in the station, the enforcers hesitated, their own helmet displays now showing the same art as the rest of the city. The raw, undeniable humanity in the images was a piece of data their combat programming didn't know how to process. In that moment of hesitation, Seven moved. He exploded into action, not with the cold, robotic precision of his past missions, but with a fluid, improvisational grace. He was not trying to kill the enforcers, he was trying to defeat them. He knew their tactics, their training, their weaknesses, because they were his own. He ducked under a pulse rifle blast, using the agent's momentum to slam him into another. He disabled their weapons with targeted strikes to their power packs. He fought not like a machine executing a program, but like an artist creating a violent, kinetic masterpiece. He was proving his own sentience with every move. The city outside was in chaos. The broadcast had gone viral, the question spreading through the networks faster than any corporate censor could contain it. The idea of sentient clones, of corporate property having a soul, was a spark thrown into the dry tinder of a tightly controlled society. It was a message from Glitch, the data broker. I don't know what you two did, but you just broke the city. Kaito's network is in chaos. They've pulled all enforcer patrols back to the corporate sector to deal with the info riots. The port is wide open. Hangar 42C. An automated cargo drone. It leaves for the outer colonies in 10 minutes. Go. Be a better ghost than I ever was. The message was a lifeline. Seven disarmed the last stunned enforcer and grabbed Lyra's hand. They ran. They sprinted through a city now arguing with itself, past crowds of people huddled around screens, debating the art, debating the question. They reached the cargo port, a vast, automated expanse of moving containers and indifferent machines. They found Hangar 42C and slipped into the dark, empty hold of a cargo drone just as its. As the drone lifted silently into the rain-swept sky, leaving the neon-drenched cage of Veridia Prime behind, Seven and Lyra looked out a small, grimy porthole at the receding city. It was a jewel box of light, now infected with a beautiful, dangerous idea that they had unleashed. Their future was a blank slate. They were fugitives with no names, no money, no history. But they were free. Lyra leaned her head on Seven's shoulder, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. Seven didn't pull away. He simply stood, watching the earth become a star among other stars. He had no memories of a past, no childhood, no parents, no love. His entire life, his real life, had begun just 3 days ago in a penthouse studio, when a woman had looked at her executioner and asked him if he dreamt. He still didn't have an answer to that question. But as he looked out at the endless, dark canvas of space, he knew, with a quiet and profound certainty, that he was about to find out. 17726.